15 minutes past 8. Welcome back to Sunrise Daily. Well, yes, we're coming to you live from Eco Hotel, venue of the ongoing Lagos Economic Summit. Today is the last day, actually. Well, we're joined now by Governor Babatunde Fashola, Senior Advocate of Nigeria. He's Lagos State Governor. Thank you for coming on this morning.
Good morning. Thank you for having me.
Well, let me even start by just asking, maybe, yes, we've spoken about this previously, but maybe not with you, the essence of this summit. Bring us up to speed about it.
Well, it's to bring together operators of the private sector. I think it's now undebatable that any economy that is not driven by the principles of capitalism, just like ours, must be led through policy by government and operated in day-to-day activity by private sector. And this is the 7th summit. The very first summit, I think, was in 2000, before I got into government, and one or two other summits thereafter. And they were largely diagnostic at the return to democracy, what were the problems, what was militating against development, where were the shoes pinching members of the private sector. And it has facilitated, therefore, an exchange between private sector to knuckle down government's attention to places where activity needed to be taken by government so that private sector could achieve its fullest objectives and potentials in terms of delivery of service, provision of opportunities, growth of the economy, and so on and so forth.
How optimistic are you? Because the previous summit, we understand, out of the entire recommendations, just about 7 up till now have not been implemented. But today there will be recommendations, and we're focusing on power. The government, at the federal level, will be very much involved with some of those recommendations. Are you optimistic that most of the recommendations, or are we not going to have a lot of them not being implemented because, quote unquote, they're out of your hands?
No, on the contrary, I think the first thing to say is that the focus on power today by this summit has become possible because power, at least 2 of the 3 main sectors, the distribution sector and the generation section of power, are now in the hands of private sector. And this makes it possible for us now to, as it were, have a look in at the door and see how we can make life better for those who have made the investment, who have taken the plunge. It's quite an ambitious undertaking for the summit, I must confess, given the jinx that we have had with power, but also given the track record of the summit in implementing substantially well over 90% of resolutions that have been passed. I don't think this is one undertaking that it will not overcome by its reputation, by its dedication. The summit is now a biennial summit, so in 2 years' time we will come and see how much progress has been made. It's always a journey, it's not a destination. There's so many things everybody has to do. We as a government will need to hold the hands of the investors who particularly now will manage the 2 largest distribution companies in our state, and they would have issues with permits, they will have issues with right of way, they would need rights of way, they would need to cut places, roads, to lay gas pipelines, and so on and so forth. They would need permits to acquire land, to set up substations, and so on and so forth. They will need distribution assets like transformers, electricity poles, stringing of cables, and so on. And they're going to be doing this with our people who live here. So there are going to be lots of issues. We need also to de-risk that sector by acting proactively, because they're going to be borrowing money from banks, and the risks will escalate depending on what we fail to do. They would need legislative support to protect their assets. There's a lot of vandalism of electricity cables, electricity assets, and all of this must stop. Government can lead with policy and action and enforcement, provide provision of security in those kind of areas. We've been meeting with them. They need information, for example, in terms of how many people are where. And so our residence registration exercise will be critical and useful not only for power sector but also for other service providers to know where their customers and consumers are. They will require audits, some of the audits we have undertaken in advance, because we saw this day coming. When we invested in a transformer manufacturing company in Badagry about 4 years or 5 years ago, it was because our government anticipated that when power generation ultimately became sufficient over and above the 4,000 megawatt, you still need to get the power into the homes. And you will need transformers, you will need meters to measure the power and also to bill for it. So we thought that, look, what was indicative to us was that a large number of these assets were being imported into Nigeria. Now, we thought that Nigerians were not going to be patient again to hear that after the power has come, there is no transformer. So we started making the transformers here. We set up a line also to start manufacturing meters. And there's so much more that we're doing, thinking ahead for our people, thinking ahead for our economy. So we've met with the owners of the two discos now, and all of this had been laid bare before them. We've given them all of the audits that we have conducted for free. We spent a lot of money doing that, but we share that information with them so that they can get going very quickly.
Now, it means that you've taken more than a look, more than a peep beyond the door. You've also gone into a bit of experimenting. You have provided, you have some independent power projects which you're using to power some state-owned infrastructure assets. Now, some people are also curious as to why the Lagos State government hasn't gone into providing also for certain consumers, for regular consumers, say for industries and these other types of people that might need power and can pay for it, especially when it can boost, the economy.
Historically, that was the purpose behind Lagos State government's investment in the AES badge for 270 megawatts during my predecessor's tenure. But unfortunately, the agreement was breached in the sense that the agreement to dedicate the power to industries who had indicated the willingness and readiness to take on the power was not implemented. And in the event, you all know the story, Lagos State was billed for power that it did not really get, and so on and so forth. But in the regulatory framework that exists today, we are not even allowed, as it were, by law, to be seen to be competing with distribution companies that have bought that asset by encroaching into what one may at best term their market. So, but our embedded power, for example, has enabled us to intervene in our own assets, like the Akute power plant, which enables us now to fully power Iju waterworks and increase the utilization capacity of the waterworks. And so power that hitherto should have gone to Iju is now available on the grid for the supplier to deal with and distribute to ordinary consumers. We've taken off Alausa with the Alausa power plant, for example, and that has freed up, I think, about 10 megawatts of power demand by government from public power. So that power is now available on the grid, and it should go ordinarily to private citizens. The same thing with what we have done on the island with the IPP. So the State House, the High Court, the Magistrates Court, about 14 schools, and a few. Now, interesting thing, we've been able to support a few other public amenities that are not even state-owned, like the police formations, like some churches that are close by. But again, we do that with the understanding that we would not be going into full distribution in order not to compete with those who have made the investments.
Essentially, you're saying that you're still hampered by law.
Yeah, the law restricts us, and I've made that point very clearly. But I think that now, the fact that in about 6 years, we've been able to develop 3 independent power plants, 2 more this year will be concluded, the one in Lekki for our waterworks in Lekki and the one in Ikeja for the teaching hospital, the High Court, and the State Police Command in that area, clearly indicates that that is the easiest way to make impact. And you would have heard from some of the sessions that that is the way that some of the owners of the new discos are looking to start some ring-fence embedded generation in small communities and small towns, maybe like Koyi, maybe like Magodo, maybe like Ugudu, where they can ring-fence and supply and hopefully then acquire incremental capacity because some of the assets also that they acquired, need a lot of work to be done on.